What would you give for the perfect story? For 30-year-old Swedish journalist Kim Wall, the answer was her own goodbye party. It was a Thursday evening in August 2017. She was days away from moving to Beijing with her partner Ole, when an unexpected text arrived that took her on a trip of no return. On a cool Copenhagen evening in August 2017, the promising journalist Kim Wall stood on the cusp of a major life change. At 30 years old, her career was already marked by an extraordinary global footprint. She had reported from some of the world's most challenging and isolated regions, from the tightly controlled streets of North Korea to the climate-threatened islands of the South Pacific. Her work, published in prestigious outlets like the New York Times, Time, and The Guardian, often focused on the intersection of identity, social justice, and unique subcultures. As summer waned, she was preparing to embark on another adventure, a move to Beijing, China with her long-term partner, Ole. In these final days in Denmark, they planned a modest farewell gathering with friends at their place on Refshalen, an island district of Copenhagen. The mood was bittersweet, filled with the casual chaos of packing and the anticipation of a new chapter. Little did anyone know that a single opportunistic text message was about to divert Kim from this celebratory path onto a far darker and final journey. The message was from Peter Madsen, a local inventor whose homemade submarine had long intrigued her. She had sought an interview for months, and now, with time running out, the invitation had finally arrived. It was a chance she felt she couldn't pass up, even if it meant leaving her own party behind. This decision, driven by the relentless curiosity that defined her life's work, would place her alone with Madsen aboard his 40-ton, 58-foot submarine, the UC-3 Nautilus, in the depths of the Øresund Strait. The ordinary farewell evening was over. An extraordinary and fatal interview was about to begin. The UC-3 Nautilus was not a military vessel, but a passion project, a hand-welded, home-built submarine that had made Peter Madsen a minor celebrity in Denmark. To Kim Wall, it represented more than a machine. It was a portal into the mind of a singularly driven and eccentric figure. Madsen, then 46, styled himself as an inventrepreneur, a man whose life's work was to defy convention. His public persona was that of a visionary, a modern-day explorer who built rockets in a hangar with a volunteer collective called Copenhagen Suborbitals, aiming for amateur spaceflight. This was the angle that truly captivated Kim. She was less interested in the mechanics of the submarine itself and more in Madsen's audacious dream of launching a human into space from a Copenhagen pier. As the Nautilus slipped beneath the dark waters of the strait that evening, Kim was already framing her questions, observing the cramped interior of sheet metal and exposed pipes, considering how this environment reflected the inventor's psyche. She had a proven talent for finding the human story within grand technological ambitions. Unbeknownst to her, the reality of Madsen's psyche was far more troubled than his public image suggested. Behind the scenes, former colleagues described a man of volatile temperament, prone to fits of rage when contradicted. His personal life included a membership in a BDSM club, from which he was reportedly asked to leave because his fascination seemed clinical rather than participatory. Most chillingly, in prior text exchanges with a sexual partner that would later surface, Madsen had outlined a hypothetical, detailed plan for murdering a woman on his submarine, describing specific tools and methods for dismemberment, a conversation he dismissed as mere joke. For Kim, this voyage was the culmination of professional persistence. For Madsen, the isolated, controlled environment of the sub may have represented something else entirely. As they descended, Kim sent a final, cheerful text to Ole. "I'm still alive, by the way, but I'm going down now. I love you. He brought coffee and cookies, though."
It was a last, normal glimpse of a woman doing her job. Above, on the surface, the world continued. Below, in the silent, pressurized dark, a different reality was taking hold.
As the farewell party continued on shore, the initial concern for Kim Wall was muted by expectation. She was a professional on assignment, and delays were part of the job.
Her partner, Ole Stabby, attended to their guests, glancing occasionally at his phone. The planned 2-hour voyage stretched past 9 p.m., then 10 p.m. The casual worry evolved into a quiet, gnawing anxiety. With no word from Kim, Ole left the social gathering and went to the pier, staring out at the black, empty water where the submarine had vanished. He called her phone repeatedly, each call going unanswered, each ringtone a tighter coil of dread in his stomach. As midnight passed, rational explanations dwindled. Ole's personal search began, a frantic bike ride along the island's perimeter, his headlights slicing the darkness, searching for any sign of the sub's tower or a distant light. Finding nothing but the vast, indifferent sea, he made the call that transformed a personal fear into an official crisis. At 1:45 a.m. on Friday, August 11th, he contacted the Copenhagen police. Just 30 minutes later, his alarm now total, he called the Danish Navy. The machinery of a major search operation clanked into motion. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging took to the air, and patrol boats began crisscrossing the Øresund Strait. The focus was a rescue mission. The assumption was a mechanical failure or a stranded vessel. Meanwhile, on a different part of the water, Peter Madsen was alive and active. In the early morning hours, before the search fleet would spot him, he was engaged in a grim and solitary task aboard the slowly moving Nautilus, a task that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with the calculated disposal of evidence. The search team scanned for a submarine in distress, not comprehending that the man they would soon find would be the sole author of the disaster they sought to rectify. The operational search for the missing submarine culminated at 10:30 a.m. on August 11th, when a helicopter crew spotted the distinctive silhouette of the UC-3 Nautilus on the surface in Køge Bay, far from its intended route. The sighting triggered a direct response, but the situation unfolded not as a rescue, but as a bizarre spectacle. A private fishing boat, its occupants aware of the missing vessel, approached the sub. They observed Peter Madsen on the exterior tower. Then, in a sequence that appeared deliberate to the witnesses, Madsen descended into the hatch. Immediately afterwards, water began to flood into the submarine, and it sank rapidly, stern first, beneath the waves. Madsen emerged from the churning water and swam to the fishing boat, where he was pulled to safety. He was calm, composed, and dryly remarked on the loss of his beloved vessel. Brought to the harbor at Dreyer, he was met by a growing crowd that included reporters and a distressed Ole Stabby. When asked by a journalist if he was all right, Madsen turned and offered a casual thumbs up, an image that would later seem profoundly incongruous. To the authorities, he presented his first story. He claimed he had dropped Kim Wall safely on land at the Rafflesin restaurant Hal Vandit around 10:30 p.m. the previous night. This account was swiftly and conclusively dismantled. Police retrieved security footage from the restaurant which showed no such event occurring at that time or any other that evening. The lie was transparent, and its detection shifted the investigation instantly from a potential accident to a probable crime. Madsen was arrested on the dock on suspicion of negligent manslaughter. The sinking of the submarine was no longer seen as a tragic malfunction, but as a potential act of deliberate scuttling, a theory supported by the fisherman's testimony and the vessel's rapid, controlled descent. The search for Kim Wall was now a search for evidence, and the primary suspect was in custody, his fabricated story already collapsing under the weight of simple, verifiable fact. Peter Madsen in custody, the investigation turned to forensic science and the painstaking recovery of evidence from the sea. The submarine was raised from the shallow seabed of Køge Bay, a hulking, dripping mass of steel that held grim secrets. Inside the cramped, flooded interior, technicians began their meticulous work. They discovered traces of Kim Wall's blood on the floor and walls of the sub, confirming she had been injured inside the vessel. This directly contradicted Madsen's story of dropping her off unharmed. Faced with this evidence, Madsen revised his narrative. He now claimed a terrible accident had occurred. The heavy 70-kilogram hatch had fallen and struck Kim on the head, killing her instantly. He said he panicked and, in a state of shock, buried her at sea in the bay. This new story prompted an intensified seabed search, not for a living woman, but for a body. Then, on August 21st, 11 days after Kim's disappearance, a cyclist on the coastline of Amager Island south of Copenhagen made a horrific discovery. Washed ashore amongst seaweed was a mutilated female torso, severed at the head, arms, and legs. DNA analysis confirmed it was Kim Wall.
The autopsy that followed was devastatingly clinical. The pathologist, Christina Jakobsen, reported the torso bore 14 stab wounds in and around the genital area and one to the ribcage. Crucially, the nature and condition of these wounds indicated they were inflicted at or around the time of death, not post-mortem. This detail was a critical blow to any accidental death scenario. The dismemberment itself was precise, the cuts clean, performed with significant force and knowledge of anatomy, likely using a saw. The discovery of the torso transformed the case from a missing persons investigation into a murder inquiry of the most gruesome kind, and Madsen's accidental hatch story dissolved in the face of intentional, violent injury. The discovery of Kim Wall's torso launched a grim, months-long recovery operation. Police divers conducted systematic grid searches across the floor of Coach Bay, a slow, murky process of sifting through silt and debris. Their efforts pieced together a chilling jigsaw puzzle. On October 6th, they recovered 2 weighted-down plastic bags containing Kim Wall's severed head and her legs. The bags were meticulously sealed and weighed with heavy metal pieces designed to sink and stay submerged. Weeks later, on November 22nd, her left arm was found, similarly bagged and weighted. Finally, on November 29th, divers located her right arm. Alongside these remains, the divers recovered critical pieces of evidence, a knife and a saw. The saw's blade would later be matched forensically to the markings on Kim Wall's bones. Simultaneously, digital forensic experts scoured Peter Madsen's workshop computer. Their findings painted a disturbing premeditative backdrop. On the hard drive, they discovered violent, fetishistic videos depicting the torture and murder of women. The browser history from the night before Kim Wall's interview, August 9th, included specific searches for terms like beheading, girl, and agony. This digital trail suggested a mind not anticipating a journalistic interview, but one preoccupied with fantasies of extreme violence. The combination of physical evidence, the tools, the weighted bags, and digital evidence, the violent media and searches, allowed prosecutors to build a case that moved far beyond a simple homicide. They began to construct a narrative of a premeditated, sexually motivated murder where the submarine was not a scene of an accident, but a chosen, private killing chamber, and the subsequent acts were a deliberate and laborious cover-up. The trial of Peter Madsen began on March 8, 2018 in Copenhagen's District Court. He faced charges of murder, sexual assault without intercourse based on the genital stab wounds, and the desecration of a corpse. In a final, drastic shift, Madsen abandoned his accidental hatch story and presented a third version of events to the court. He claimed Kim Wall died from carbon monoxide poisoning from the submarine's engine while he was on deck getting air. He stated he found her lifeless body below, and after failing in a plan to sink himself with the vessel, he decided to dismember her to make her body easier to remove. He insisted the stab wounds were inflicted hours after death to release gases from decomposition, a claim the chief pathologist, Christina Jakobsen, firmly rejected. She testified the wounds were peri-mortem, at or near the time of death, and were too superficial to serve the purpose Madsen described. The prosecution, led by Jakob Buch-Jepsen, systematically dismantled this new account. They presented the evidence of the tools, the saw, knife, straps, and pipes that had never been on previous voyages, arguing they were brought aboard as a murder kit. They highlighted Madsen's internet history and the violent videos, painting a picture of a man with a specific and practiced interest in female torture. Crucially, a technical analysis found no evidence of dangerous exhaust fume buildup in the submarine's air system. Perhaps the most emotionally powerful testimony came from Kim's partner, Ole Stabe, who revealed that Kim had actually been apprehensive about the trip but was determined to get the story. This detail underscored her professionalism and tragically highlighted her vulnerability. The trial revealed not a chaotic accident, but a controlled and horrific crime. Madsen's constantly changing stories against the solid, unshakable forensics framed him not as a panicked inventor, but as a calculating liar, whose final story was as technically flawed as his sunken submarine. The verdict was delivered on April 25, 2018.
The court found Peter Madsen guilty of the premeditated murder of Kim Wall, of sexual assault, and of the desecration of her corpse. The judges cited the overwhelming physical evidence, the implausibility of his changing accounts, and the proof of preparation. He was sentenced to life in prison, which in Denmark typically averages 16 to 17 years before parole consideration, with the possibility of application after 12 years. His appeal was denied in September of that same year, solidifying the sentence. A subsequent psychiatric evaluation ordered by the court diagnosed Madsen with a severe narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy, noting a severe lack of empathy, guilt, and remorse, and concluding he posed a permanent danger to others. In the years following his incarceration, Madsen's notoriety continued. He married a Russian artist in a prison ceremony in 2019, a union that ended in divorce. In 2020, he staged a brief escape using a fake pistol and a simulated explosive belt, leading to an additional 21-month sentence. Most significantly, in a 2020 documentary titled The Submarine Killer: Confessions of a Murderer, he finally admitted culpability. After over 20 hours of taped conversations, when asked directly if he killed Kim Wall, he stated, "Yes, it's my fault she died, and it's my fault because I committed the crime." This belated admission provided little solace. For Kim Wall's family and friends, the focus remained on reclaiming her legacy from the horror of her death. They established the Kim Wall Memorial Fund, which provides grants to support young female investigative journalists, embodying her adventurous spirit. Her parents published a memoir, A Silenced Voice. Their aim, and that of all who loved her, is to ensure Kim Wall is remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived, as a brave, brilliant, and curious voice in the world. That is all we have for today's episode. If you enjoyed this case, do well to drop a like, subscribe if you enjoyed chilling cases like this, and as always, I will be seeing you on our next episode.